This is Kayla Pearl. Friday, November 19th, 2010. I'm interviewing Mahlia Joyce in Westminster. Hello.
Hi.
How long have you lived in Carroll County?
Since I was, I don't know, a couple of months old.
Okay, so you grew up in Carroll County.
I grew up here, yeah.
Do you think your time in Carroll County has an effect on your quality of life?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. What changes have you seen in Carroll County since you first remember it from now?
Wow, so when I was growing up, in the county, it was actually a lot simpler, and I think sometimes I take for granted that I have a certain level of comfort here, and so things like just walk into the corner store that used to be where Maggie's is now. Well, that used to be on the parking lot where Maggie's is. There's a store called Samuel's that I used to walk to from my great-grandmother's house, and being able to just play out on the sidewalk, being able to just be outside without a whole lot of supervision, I think I take that for granted, and expect that that's just kind of the way it's been sometimes for everybody. When in reality, if I really think about it, I know that that's not the way it's been for everybody, and I know that that's not the way it is now. So I think that that's one big change that, it's definitely, I don't know that I feel as safe physically as I used to feel in the community. But interestingly enough, I think I feel less safe psychologically than I did back then too. So I don't know, it's kind of a weird mix. Like, I know the police are here, but I'm not really thank goodness I haven't had a need to call on them. But I'm not really, much of a person to be like, hey, let me call the police. My interactions, I've had good, I've had bad interactions with them. Say with other public agencies, of course, growing up, maybe that did shade sort of how I perceived public officials and people who work in agencies and things like that. Because growing up, we were usually going to request services at an agency. So like when we were on welfare and we were involved with Department of Social Services and we were getting, food from feeding programs or whatever, my experience with those agencies usually was that, they clearly had the power, we clearly didn't, and they let you kind of know that in sometimes not so subtle ways and other times subtle ways, just through attitude or tone or what they didn't tell you, what they chose to tell you or didn't tell you. And I'd see how they, how they talk with my mom and how they, treat my mom sometimes, and even how they treat my brother and I, and clearly we were second class. And I don't know how much of that is, I don't know how much of that has changed from that standpoint, because I've obviously now been put in a different socioeconomic status and a different group. But so seeing that change, and which is one of the reasons that I've become so involved, or try to become so involved in community outreach, because I'd like to be the person involved in some of these agencies, or help to shape these agencies to be more sensitive, to be more responsive, culturally competent, not just around issues of race, but around issues of class. And because you can have, a white social worker be just as rude to a white client who's coming from poverty as that social worker could be to a black client, or vice versa. So it's I think more so the community, my experience of the community has changed from being from being here at the college from having left the community and then coming back and seeing it through like sort of a different set of eyes. I was always critical of it, but then coming back, I've even learned to be more appreciative of certain things. Sometimes the simplicity, the way that things do tend to move slower, the way that things do tend to happen based on relationships and social capital, which is a good and a bad thing, because if you're on the receiving end of that and you're in that network, then you're in good shape. If you're not in that network or not connected with any of those networks, you're like really trying to row a canoe with, I'd say, one oar, but sometimes for some people it's no oars. So yeah, I could probably ramble on and on, but you probably have more questions.
Well, I was going to ask, how have those changes impacted you? But since McDaniel is around Westminster and you grew up in Westminster, has McDaniel ever had like a relationship with the community from like the time that you remember? Like, I mean we're so close to Westminster. Like, has McDaniel reached out to the community? I mean, because I know in some cities, some colleges are like interlocked, like they have like programs for the kids to come, and so has McDaniel like ever did that? I mean, do you wish that McDaniel would do that? Like,
I mean, that's kind of hard for me to say in terms of like, except from my perspective growing up. So I know when I was younger, when I was little, I participated in some summer enrichment programs, and summer like learning camp kinds of things, and I don't even remember what agencies, organizations they were through, but I feel like some of the activities happened here on campus. Like, I remember going to the swimming pool. I remember being in different places on campus for us to use the facilities, but it wasn't really so much like we were interacting with the campus community. We were just kind of here in our own little world, sharing space with whoever else happened to be here. But I rarely saw other people like on who were around. So I didn't really see that so much as outreach. And other than that, though, I can't think of too many other examples in my lifetime. I know that there were things like SOS and Hinge beforehand, in which students as volunteers went out into the community for Project Hinge, and students as well as volunteers went out across the country and sometimes into other countries. It's sort of like a Western Maryland version of the Peace Corps. That was in the 60s and 70s. But I don't know that I've seen like much of that since I've been more connected with the college. Now, of course, there's the relationship between the college and the Boys and Girls Club, somewhat between the college and higher learning, and maybe a couple of other agencies here or there. And I know that the president is really trying to create more opportunities for the community and the college to become more connected. I'd say that my concern with that sometimes, though, not specifically with the president, but my concern with this connection between the college and the community, and one thing that I try to bring up anytime I get a chance in some meeting somewhere, is that it should be mutual, and it should be based on mutual respect and mutual service to both parties. So not this like, we are the college, we know what's best for your community, or we're going to help you out community because you're less powerful and weaker than we are, you're not as smart as we are, you're not as whatever as we are. Like, I really, that turns my stomach, like I can't even tell you. So I just really hope that it happens in a way that's equitable, so that it's not like I said, that like weird
Yeah.
power dynamic and that very patriarchal and hierarchical and oppressive kind of scenario.
What advice would you have for someone moving to Carroll County? Like if they decided
Have
to
a
move.
car. Make sure you have a well-running car, because otherwise you're going to be trapped.
Okay.
Think of different ways to get involved. Community involvement doesn't always look like it does every place else. I mean, I know growing up I would always say there's nothing going on. And that was one of the reasons I couldn't wait to move away from this place. And when I moved back here, I was like, what am I doing? Well, actually, it's funny, because I was looking forward to coming back on one hand, because I was really more appreciative of the wide open spaces, the quiet places, being able to go out to Hashua, being able to go really closely and quickly to the Catoctin Mountains or to the grotto up at Mount St. Mary's, having so many parks around that I could go to, waterways being close by, gardening, driving through, some of the back roads. I love taking back roads because I love driving through farmland and looking at the rolling hills and thinking about, the work that people do. And especially when I ride out 31 towards New Windsor and through the Wakefield Valley area, and that's probably what drew me back here, really, because that's the area where my family had actually worked as slaves and lived as slaves. And so I just felt this strong connection, and I wanted to connect more with that part of my roots here, which to me meant the land. I was trying to connect more with the land, like with the actual place. It's been more of a challenge connecting with people. So I think any advice that I gave to somebody moving here is to really just come here with an open mind, not move in here trying to change things quickly, because change definitely happens slowly here. Be willing to listen and listen to people's emotions. I think one thing that Carroll County has taught me, particularly whenever I hear people express really intolerant or insensitive or prejudiced thoughts against any group, Carroll being here has taught me to listen to that, to first of all be able to stomach it, but then to be able to listen to it and listen to some of the emotions that might be behind it. So to listen for the fear and to try and empathize and understand where that's coming from. To listen to the fact that people have a really strong sense of tradition and what's been simple, and they're scared of losing that simple life. And a bunch of poor people move in here, or a bunch of black people move in here, or a bunch of non-Christian people move in here, or a bunch of whatever is different, gay people move in here, is going to upset the whole balance, and it's not going to be safe. So I used to listen to that and just be like, ugh, I don't want to hear it. That has that makes me even more want to run away from this place again. But the more I've stayed, the more I've really tried to work on, okay, I need to listen to what's behind that. So it comes out sounding like hate, to be quite honest, but I always think that behind hate is fear. And then I try to listen for what is it that people are actually afraid of? And then also beyond that, what is it that people value? And then that's where I feel like I can connect with people, because I do value some of the same things. We just have different ways of expressing that, and we have different ways of holding on to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sorry to ramble.
Any final thoughts on Carroll County and growing up in Carroll County?
It was tough. It really was tough. I hadn't really thought so much until recently about, until maybe the past couple of years about, not so much, I mean, it definitely wasn't the kind of place where, or time. I grew up, of course, in the 80s when this was after the water hoses and the dogs and things that didn't really happen so much here anyway. This was much more of a quiet community, even during the civil rights movement and with other, human rights kinds of issues. Our community tends to stay really quiet about that. And so it's not like a big protesting kind of place, which when I came back, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to make it a protest place. We're going to learn to protest. I'm going to bring all this energy, because I was coming back from Washington, D.C., and I was like fired up. And I'm like, I'm going to come back and I'm going to get people in my community fired up. Yeah, I had to learn to put that away somewhere, because that's just not how we do things here. But the fact that it is sort of like, okay, slow, we think about it, we change things slowly, we try to change things from the inside instead of like, always from the outside. It took me a while to figure out that had a really big psychological impact on me. And I'd say that's probably been the toughest thing about being back here. And so then when I ask myself, or when other people ask me, so why do you stay? Because there's still work to do. There's work definitely still to do. And just because it might be psychologically, emotionally taxing for me, really, really hard, it's changed me in ways that I don't like sometimes. But I mean, I get reminded a lot of times that if I was in a community where there was more of a tradition of like activism and protesting and speaking out and like being more, I guess, like forceful, radical with changing. There are a lot of communities like that. Like when I worked in D.C., that's just how things happen. When I lived in D.C. and worked there, that's just how things happen. And but in a way it's easier because those networks are already in place. There's already a system set up to support people in doing that work. Those systems aren't here, so it is harder, but that doesn't mean not to do it. That just means for me to I need to find ways to reaffirm and reaffirm other people when they also do the work, because it is tough. It is tough to be here. So if I had the time, what I'd love to do is form some kind of like coalition of people who can talk about and work through, first of all, acknowledge the, sometimes mental health implications of working and living in a community that doesn't reflect you, and not reflect you, I mean physically, and also not reflect you in terms of like values and political views and worldview and things like that. But to really acknowledge that can have effects on mental health, to then just be in a community of people who are willing to talk about that, and then willing to figure out like what we can do about it. What are the things where does that come from even? Like how long has that been here? And that would just be like, I think that would be my dream job to do here in Carroll County. If I somehow did that through the college, great, but just to be able to do it, I don't know. I think it would be so healing. For me, as well, of course, but as well as for like a lot of people, I think it would have to go to that like hurtful open wound place first, but then I think it just has the potential to really be so healing too in the end, and empowering for people to say, you know what, the reason maybe I have chosen to, or I have like fallen prey to drugs and other kinds of things in the community is because, you know, there's some messed up stuff that goes on, and not saying that that's the reason, but all the time. But if we don't ever have a way of healthily working out these like unhealthy patterns and dysfunctional patterns and oppressive patterns, then people do reach out in different ways to get those psychological needs met. So, you know, drugs might be a way of reaching out without knowing it necessarily. Or for me, it was, you know, I became addicted to academia. I became addicted to learning. That was that was probably my addiction. You know, my escape to learn and then figure out how to get away, and to be able to travel in my mind, to imagine other things. You know, I think we all just like reach out for different stuff, and yeah, I'd like to be at some point, somehow, I'd like to be a part of really like getting together with a group of people and changing, at least talking about it, at least starting a conversation. Because I think we stay too quiet about it.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. The interview is over.
Okay.
That is it.
Alrighty.